Hello and welcome our viewers and listeners to our Saturday, February 19, 2022 program. This is Shimelis Gebremichael with UMD News Package for today. We invite you all to stay with the program, and for your feedbacks, please use our email address newstips2020umd@gmail.com. UMD extensively works in understanding, measuring, and doing matters. Our news team is attempts to update you with the latest in Ethiopia, the Horn of Africa in general. Any of your support, including the provision of news tips, is always welcomed. Before we jump into our news package, here are the headlines for the major news of the day. UN Deputy Secretary General says Ethiopia in much better place to resolve Tigray conflict. WHO says crucial supplies not reaching embattled northern Ethiopia. Top Eritrean army general allegedly fired for suggesting withdrawal from northern Ethiopia. Now, we will move into providing more information on these and other news items for today. As we always say, please do not forget to like and share our programs and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Also view the programs in other platforms like Facebook. Our news program in English and Amharic languages are transmitted twice a week, and we really apologize for missing two of our news airing due to some technical issues. Let's move to our first news segment of looking into major brief stories over the week. First up, European and African Union Summit conducted on February 17th and 18th, 2022 in Brussels. The heads of state of member states of the African Union and the European Union met for the 6th European Union African Union Summit in Brussels on the 17th and 18th February 2022. During their meeting, EU and AU leaders agreed on a joint vision for a renewed partnership. The aims of the partnerships are solidarity, security, peace, and sustained economic development and prosperity for the citizens of the two continents. They also deliberated on financing, health system, agriculture and sustainable development, education, culture, and vocational training, as well as migration and mobility. Despite these backdrops, Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, who took part in the meeting, confronted a lot of denouncements by members of the Tigray community in Europe. Amnesty International alleged the Tigrayan forces in the Amhara region of Ethiopia. Tigray government denounced most of the allegations. Amnesty International accused the Tigray forces of deliberately killing civilians, raping and sexually assaulting women and girls, and looting homes, shops, schools, and medical clinics into localities they controlled for a period of several weeks last year in Ethiopia's northern Amhara region. In its latest press release, the report urged the African Union to step up its engagement in the crisis and the renewal, the relevant United Nations bodies to send experts to the region to investigate the violations. In response to the report, the government of Tigray stated that its forces never deliberately targeted innocent civilians, while appreciating the advocacies of many international human rights organizations, including the Amnesty International. The Tigray forces have called upon them to enhance their credibility by not complying with the ill intentions of Abiy, Isaias, and other forces, and mainly focusing on the real causes of the people of the country. Tigrayans and allies celebrated the 47th anniversary of the commencement of the struggle. The national colors of red and yellow in major cities of Tigray and across the globe have been witnessed this last week. February 18, locally known as Lekatit 11 or Lekatit Asartahada, celebrated all over the world through different assortments. The day marks the commencement of the armed struggle by the Tigray People's Liberation Front (TPLF) against the dictatorial Derg regime in Ethiopia, which was toppled after 17 years of fierce fighting. The celebration this year, as many could agree, is unique in a sense that the region is still in siege, where millions are in need of aid and basic assistance. The people of Tigray and all the supporters over the world are dedicating this year's celebration to end the siege and bring the people of Tigray to their daily norms. Various efforts, including the armed struggle, are still in progress by the people and government of Tigray to end the acts of aggression and suppression. UN says attack on Ethiopia refugee camp kills 5 people. Fighting in northern Ethiopia's Afar region engulfed the camp housing refugee from neighboring Eritrea, the United Nations has said, killing 5 people and forcing thousands to flee. According to Al Jazeera reports, the attack earlier this month is the latest blow to the more than 100,000 Eritrean refugees living in Ethiopia. The Barahale camp is situated near the border between Afar and Tigray. UN says Horn of Africa drought kills over 1.5 million livestock. A senior UN official says drought in the Horn of Africa has killed more than 1.5 million livestock and drastically cut cereal production. FAO's Director of Emergencies and Resilience, Rain Paulson, recently said drought in the Horn of Africa has killed more than 1.5 million livestock and drastically cut cereal production. And we are most definitely now sitting on the brink of catastrophe. And now we move to some other news we chose to present in more details for today. The first one is UN Deputy Secretary General says Ethiopia in much better place to resolve the Tigray conflict. On the last day of the 5-day trip to Ethiopia, Deputy Secretary General Amina Mohammed recently told journalists as she left the capital, Addis Ababa, that there is much more conversation and dialogue and talk around the national dialogue itself and the way to peace. Stressing the Secretary General's call for the cessation of hostilities and for a pathway to peace, she noted how the talks continue and there is certainly less hostility than there was a few months ago. During her visit, the deputy chief met people living in the regions of Tigray, Amhara, Somalia, and Afar, where she witnessed the tragedies of the conflict firsthand, but also learned of the efforts made by the government and the people of Ethiopia to end the fighting. She noted how important it was to hear from the leaders there, to hear from the people, and to hear really what their hopes are and how they will engage with this pathway to peace. According to Ms. Mohammed, there is never a winner in conflict. In all her visits, she said what became obvious was that the biggest losers of this conflict are the women and children. Meanwhile, UN reports are showing aid operations in Tigray largely reduced or suspended. The UN's emergency response agency OCHA recently said fuel and cash shortages have forced humanitarian operations to a virtual standstill in Ethiopia's war-hit Tigray region. Tigray itself has for months been subject to what the UN says is a de facto blockade. The United States has accused the Ethiopian government of blocking aid. In a briefing note released last Thursday, the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs said that the aid deliveries in Tigray had been largely reduced or suspended, including critical distribution of food, water, health, and nutrition services. According to OCHA, overall, 1,339 trucks have entered the Tigray region from Samara since July 12, which represents about 9% of the required supplies needed to meet the vast scale of humanitarian needs in Tigray. Malnutrition continues to soar in Tigray, OCHA said, with 6.4% of screened children diagnosed with severe acute malnutrition between February 1 to 7. This is a warning that the supplies used to treat such cases were completely depleted or almost entirely exhausted. Last month, the UN's World Food Program said that nearly 40% of people in Tigray were suffering an extreme lack of food, with fuel shortages forcing aid workers to deliver medicines and other crucial supplies by foot. WHO says crucial supplies are not reaching Embattled northern Ethiopia. World Health Organization officials say insecurity and bureaucratic difficulties continue to prevent medical supplies and other crucial relief from reaching millions of beleaguered civilians in conflict-ridden northern Ethiopia. An estimated 9.4 million people in northern Ethiopia's Tigray, Amhara, and Afar regions are in desperate need of humanitarian assistance. Millions are suffering from severe food shortages, acute malnutrition, disease, and chronic illnesses are going untreated. WHO spokesperson Christian Lidmia says the situation is particularly critical in Tigray. He says the number of people needing health assistance has risen from 2.3 million during the first half of December to an estimated 3.9 million. However, he says there is what he calls light on the horizon. He notes a shipment of medical supplies reached Ma'ala, the capital of Tigray, at the end of January. Ethiopian officials accused of extorting Tigrayan detainees. Alleged victims and their families said Ethiopian security officers have been systematically extorting and abusing Tigrayan civilians held without charge. According to the UN report, at least 1,000 Tigrayans, including United Nations staff, were arrested in 2 weeks in November 2021 in the capital Addis Ababa. The Ethiopian government says it only targets those suspected of supporting the rebels. However, as profiling and detentions increased, so did the extortion of detainees by police and prison wardens, according to victims and relatives of victims who spoke to Al Jazeera over the past months. We have become a commodity in prison, said Kirubel, who spent up to 7 months detained in Addis Ababa facility until his family paid for his release. They slap a price on you. Then your loved ones have to find money and buy your freedom. prison wardens, government prosecutors, and officials from the local attorney general's offices are among those alleged to have demanded exorbitant bribes for release. Detainees also told Al Jazeera that payments are often required to secure medicine and, in some cases, to use toilets and showers throughout their indefinite detentions. Sagan, also in Addis Ababa, told Al Jazeera that the police phoned to demand a 2,500 birr, that is a $50 payment to cover cleaning and drinking water for his imprisoned brother. Some relatives of prisoners described being asked to deliver as much as 500,000 Ethiopian birr, that is $10,000 in ransom payments. However, in Ethiopia, where the average annual income is at least $1,000, the majority of detainees have languishing behind bars with their impoverished families unable to afford the release price. Al Jazeera's February 10, 2022 edition has the full or the detailed report for you, our listeners and viewers, to read. Several killed in an attack targeting Somalia election delegates. Armored group Al Shabaab has claimed responsibility for the attack, in which a suicide bomber targeted a minibus in Mogadishu. A suicide bomber targeting a minibus full of delegates involved in Somalia's parliamentary elections killed at least 6 people in Mogadishu. The ambulance service said as the Al Qaeda linked Al Shabaab armed group claimed responsibility for the attack. The blast occurred early Thursday as the vehicle was passing a busy junction on a road heading to the president office in the capital of the East African nation. Security official Abdullahi Mukhtar told the AFP news agency that the area was densely populated when the blast occurred, and some of the victims, most of them civilians, are seriously wounded. He said 6 people died and 12 were injured. Mogadishu's Amin ambulance service confirmed the fatalities in the statement sent to journalists, but said the attack had wounded 13. Witness Mohammed Tahil said the blast was huge, and I saw ambulances carrying wounded victims, some of them with serious injuries. Al Shabaab, which claims to topple the central government and impose its own severe interpretation of Islamic law, claimed responsibility for the attack, saying it killed 6 delegates and 5 police officers. Top Eritrean army general allegedly fired for suggesting withdrawal from northern Ethiopia. Security sources told Sudan Post that President Isaias Afwerki has allegedly fired a senior Eritrean army general after reportedly suggesting end to the Eritrean army presence in the northern part of the Ethiopian region. President Isaias reportedly removed the unnamed member of the Eritrean army command late in January, when the president could not be convicted for the reason suggested by the army officer that warrant withdrawal from the northern Ethiopia. The security source, who requested not to be named, said, as you know, there has been an armed force from Eritrea, and this general suggested, according to information we heard, that the presence of Eritrean forces in Tigray and some parts of the Afar was not necessary. The security sources added it is at this point that the President Isaias, who is not convinced of the many reasons given by the general that I don't know what they are, decided to replace him with junior officer whom he promoted to the rank of Major General. Eritrea government had dispatched thousands of its forces to fight alongside the Ethiopian federal forces in Tigray, where the conflict initiated in November 2020. Under United States and international pressure, Eritrea was forced to return its forces to its territories, but thousands more of the Eritrean forces remained in the northern Ethiopia despite government claims in Asmara that it does not have forces in Ethiopia. Last week, Tigray region's President Gebremichael said he was in informal talks with the government of Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed to possibly reach a ceasefire with him, but set several preconditions, including the withdrawal of Eritrean and other forces or other foreign forces. It is also to be recalled that Eritrean Patriarch Abuna Antonios who also dies after 16 years in detention by Isaias Afwerki. The former Orthodox leader was long confined for resisting government requests to excommunicate thousands of members. His Holiness Abuna Antonios, a confined Eritrean Orthodox Church Patriarch, and the longest serving prisoner of conscience in the Horn of Africa, died on February 9, 2022, at the age of 94 after suffering a lot in prison. Coalition says two prominent Sudanese critics of military detained. Forces of Freedom and Change (FFC) coalition said in a recent statement that two prominent Sudanese political figures who held top positions in the civilian administration before a military takeover in October have been arrested. The arrests mark an extension of a crackdown on critics of the military and follow those of dozens of activists linked to a protest movement against the October 25 coup. The two officials detained, Khalid Omar Yusuf and Wagdi Dali, had previously been involved in a task force that seized property and fired bureaucrats linked to the regime of Omar al-Bashir, who fell to popular uprising in 2019. And now moving to our final news for the day. UN says 13 million threatened by severe hunger in the Horn of Africa. An estimated 13 million people face severe hunger in the Horn of Africa due to consistent drought conditions. According to the United Nations World Food Programme, 327 million is needed to meet immediate $327 million is needed to meet immediate needs over the next 6 months and help rural communities become more resilient to recurring climate shocks. A recent report released states Ethiopia, Somalia, and Kenya are the hardest hit. These countries have not had rains for 3 years, making them experience the driest conditions since 1981. WFP's regional director for East Africa, Michael Dunford, said in a statement, crops are ruined, livestock are dying, and hunger is on the rise as recurrent drought affects the whole of Africa. Food aid is being distributed across the arid of Kenya, Ethiopia, and Somalia, where malnutrition rates are high, and some 13 million are at risk of going hungry. In the first quarter of this year, in southern and southeastern Ethiopia, some 5.7 million people are in dire need of food. Until urgent actions are taken, the number of people classified as severely hungry in Somalia is expected to rise from 3.5 million to 4.6 million by May. According to Africa News, an additional 2.8 million people need assistance in northeastern and northern Kenya, where a drought emergency was declared in September. Well, that's all we have for today. This has been Shimelis Gebremichael here at UMD Media. Please do not forget to like and share our program and subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can follow our programs also through other platforms in order to become the first to know.